Hospital Porter's pride and dignity. Stop the New World Order. Welcome to her Panmo TV. Yep, I'm punching the air. Well, this is a video I actually wasn't going to make until maybe sometime next week or the week after. The title I originally chose for it was Denying 2016. That's the title of the article I wrote on her Panmo Voice, or the two articles, really, on which this video is based. I thought better of it. I think that perhaps it's not a very good title. In fact, I'll probably change the title on the actual article as well. See, the thing is, this denying something else, it inevitably, especially in this situation with David Icke in Australia, it leads to the connotations with Holocaust denier. And well, you know what I think about that because of that video I made about David being banned from Australia. So I'm going to change the title of the article. I don't know if I'll change the title, but I'm definitely not going to use that title for this video. I'll use a different title, such as Why 2016 Matters. That's the working title I've already decided on, and I'll probably make it permanent. Why 2016 Matters? Well, you see, this is a big question because 2016, of course, is a year. It's 3 years ago now. It's 2019. And I know the numerologists among you will have a lot to say about that, but it is a year, but it's a very, very special year. In fact, it's one I use when I say 2016. I'm very often referring to the amazing political events of that year. It's something like some of the street protests, as they talk about 1968, when there was all these protests around the world. These old baby boomers who are sort of like bank managers now, who used to be hippies, they talk about, hey, I'm a 68er, man, you know, things like that. 2016, I think, in the conspirasphere, is kind of the same thing, which is because something happened in that year which has never happened at any point in history, certainly within my lifetime, maybe for many centuries. And that is the Illuminati control system of this world significantly broke down. There really was a major snafu in the engine room for a short time, and it was temporary, unfortunately. This doesn't mean it can't happen again. It doesn't mean that the Illuminati completely recovered all the ground they lost, but for a short time, the political structures of this world were literally flailing about in the dark, unable to get any kind of phone call through to head office, and that has not happened before. I'm referring specifically to the two events that happened in that year and the associated events surrounding them that go by the two-word phrase or motto, Brexit Trump. I'm talking, of course, about the decision in the referendum in Britain to leave the United Kingdom, to leave the European Union. There's a Welsh in me coming out there, and of course the election of Donald Trump to be President of the United States. And I know exactly what some of you are going to say now, and some of you have said to me. So is the lighting all right? Oh, sorry, just a moment. Okay, I know what some of you are going to say to me right now, and you have indeed. Ben, can't you see it? Trump is just another insider. He's part of the agenda. He's part of the system, man. Can't you see it? It's all he was meant to be president. The Illuminati intended for him to be president. Why don't you see it? And as for Brexit is all part of the New World Order. The powers that be, the globalists, they wanted Brexit and they planned it, and we fell into their trap. Why can't you see it, Ben? Why can't you? This is why I'm so much cleverer than you are, Ben. I've had that so many times you wouldn't believe, you know, and what's more, I still disagree. I am a 2016 enthusiast. It's funny, you may have noticed there's an extra bit of decoration in my little studio here, which you don't normally see. It's this, of course. It's what the Irish call the butcher's apron. And that's why I call the EU flag the gender study professor's apron. The Union flag, of course, flag of the United Kingdom. It's really, really weird, actually, what's happened, which in my learning process during these last few years, because there's a time when in my previous the thoughts and feelings that were going around before 2016, or maybe several years before 2016, I would have probably agreed with the 2016 naysayers. I'm not going to say 2016 deniers. Sorry, I almost came out 2016 deniers, but I don't want to use that term for the reasons I've already explained. This symbol, of course, represented the establishment. It represented the British Empire, which was an Illuminati front set up by many people, including Cecil Rhodes and many other people who worked to further Illuminati rule around the world, in the same way that they did before with the Spanish Empire and indeed with the Roman Empire even earlier. So this essentially was a symbol of a front for Illuminati global rule. That's how I saw it. But since then, since 2016, I see things very differently. This symbol, and indeed, for example, patriotic music and things like that, like the Royal Grenadier March and things like that, I see they've taken on a completely new tone in my ear and in my eye when it comes to symbols like this. Today, things like what you see here, because of the 2016 effect, this symbol is actually very anti-establishment. I would say it's a subversive symbol, almost countercultural. How things change. It really is amazing, isn't it? So yeah, I'm going to go through some of the points I want to make in this video, which I've mentioned this video before actually. The video I was going to make. I said I was going to make basically, but a lot of people were saying, telling me to do this. They were bringing my attention to the work of one Neil Sanders, and I thank people for doing that. I'm already aware of Neil's publications on this matter, and I have been meaning to make a video in reply to him. I've already actually written 2 articles in reply to him, which I'll put links to in the description box if I remember. But this is essentially a video version of that, so I hope you get something out of it. I'm just I'm hoping that people will understand my position as a 2016 enthusiast. It's not a position of naivety. It's not a position of, oh my god, you've been fooled and I haven't, Ben, my goodness me, how superior I am to you, Ben. It's not that. It's I believe I've put together a reasoned argument about why 2016 matters, and so that's my position. So let's go through some of the material on Neil Sanders' website, which he's been talking about. Now, this chap here is Neil Sanders, and he's somebody who's come up in the comments box quite a lot, because people often leave comments on my videos saying, Ben, what do you think about Neil Sanders? What do you think? Look what he's been saying. What do you think of him? What do you on Facebook, people always bring him up and things like that. Now, Neil Sanders has actually been on the Herpanwo show twice, so if you listen to Herpanwo Radio, you will know him. He's been a guest twice, and he's written a couple of books, including quite a good one actually, called Your Thoughts Are Not Your Own, which is in several volumes now, so I do recommend. And the thing is though, he's recently changed his tune a little bit. He's spoken out on radio interviews, and he's been writing in his blog all about that 2016 buzzword, that little duopoly of the 2016 phenomenon, Brexit and Trump, and who he believes is behind them and why. Now, Donald Trump, of course, a New York businessman who came out of the blue to be elected President of the United States with every corner of the mainstream media opposing him. Despite the fact that he ran against one of the most powerful women in the world, he was victorious. Now, for some people in the truth movement, including me, it as I said, and I'll go into more details about this, something seriously, badly gone wrong with the New World Order at a very fundamental level. And I even started wondering if, in 2016, if we might be looking at the defeat of the New World Order agenda in our lifetimes. That's the hope. And this is what I've always wanted. I always thought, if I could be born and live in the period when the New World Order is gone, wouldn't that be absolutely fantastic? To actually see that, to be able to watch that transition from the Illuminati occupation, the world of Illuminati occupation, to the post-Illuminati world, or at least see one part of that transitional period, because the transitional period could be actually longer than a human lifetime. But I came out with phrases like Brexit Trump, and springtime in Narnia. That's another one. Springtime in Narnia. I covered this on if you go to the live stream I did. I've done, which live stream was it? I don't know. Another video I made about. I've made videos about this. Oh God, you know where they are. You look for them. I also talked about the 2016 effect, of course. Now, naturally, at the back of my mind, there was this whisper of caution. Could it simply be another trick? What if Trump and Brexit are just crafty, a crafty and more subtle twist of this? Of the machinations of this global elite. Well, maybe it's just we've been had, Macy. That was at the back of my mind. It used to be. It's not anymore, but it was for a while. Now, Neil Sanders says yes. He says that's exactly what it is. It is simply this is what's going on now. He completely dismisses this notion that Trump is a wild card. He says that basically because this idea that he's not a government insider. He's non-political. On the contrary. Sanders says that Trump is in fact a placement for a powerful network of super-rich plutocrats centered around somebody called Robert Mercer. Now, Robert Mercer is a computer scientist. He's a financier. He's from New Mexico, USA, which is where Roswell happened. So I can't help bringing in these connections, can I? I'm sure that's not relevant. It just sort of popped into my head. Now, Mercer is the single biggest individual donor of the entire 2016 US presidential election. And he's used his skill in the world of computing to influence the internet using a data analysis and storage and strategic communication system. And this is all run by a firm called Cambridge Analytica. That's a good name, isn't it? You don't forget that one, Cambridge Analytica. Now, Neil says that... sorry. Neil says that it's a psychological warfare outfit. Cambridge Analytica is simply a psyop. Its methodology is similar to the CIA, to MI5, GCHQ, and other organisations which have been proven to have meddled in foreign democratic processes, especially in South America. Mercer was helped by a now notorious individual called Steve Bannon. Steve Bannon, of course, of Breitbart and various other institutions, who's become very famous. He was actually in President Trump's government for a while. Twice, actually. It was sacked twice. Anyways, the vice president of Cambridge Analytica, and this organisation has used a number of underhand schemes to influence public opinion in favour of Trump's campaign, apparently. Now, the media organisation, like I said, Breitbart, was essential to this. Steve Bannon soon became its editor-in-chief, and it was subsidised by Mercer. And Robert Mercer also used Cambridge Analytica to engineer the Leave vote during the Brexit referendum. Apparently, they worked very closely with Nigel Farage during the Brexit referendum. Cambridge Analytica was all behind that. Fear of Islam and Muslims was the tactic they used, and they've been helped by rebel media, which apparently is another part of Mercer's network, and includes a chap called Tommy Robinson, who's quite famous these days. Tommy Robinson, often in trouble with the law, he's at the moment. He's the former leader of the English Defence League, which is, there's a lot of signs that it's controlled by Mossad. It seems to be designed to create this counter-jihad, and I think maybe generate in this drive to generate a future civil war, which I've talked about in previous shows, and I'll probably come back to it. So the scale of this network is really huge. It contains numerous names familiar to and respected by both those in the alt-right and the conspirasphere, and there is an overlap between those two, I know. Alex Jones, Milo Yiannopoulos, Richard Spencer, Lauren Southern, James O'Keefe, Dr. Jordan Peterson, Dave Rubin, Laura Loomer, many, many more. And apparently, even the slogans Drain the Swamp, Make America Great Again, Build the Wall, Fake News, Deep State, these come from the Mercer Bannon Public Relations Consultancy. Now, this of course is disturbing news, because what Neil is saying here is very demoralising. If he's right, it means the possibilities of an entire sector of the truth movement are hoping for are wrong. We have been chasing a mirage. But is that the case? Now, Neil describes himself as apolitical. He says he's neutral over the subject of Brexit. He did not vote in the election, in the referendum. He describes the situation with this analogy. Voting in the US or UK election or the EU referendum is like being a child choosing a boarding school. It doesn't matter which one you want. This little boy, young boy, choosing a boarding school. It doesn't matter which you want. If you want to, you tell your dad which one to send you to. It doesn't matter which one he sends you to. The only certainty is you're going to get screwed by an older boy who is richer than you. And he says he's opposed to left-wing authoritarianism too, and so he says I think he's generally kind of an anarchist, centralist, I think, based on what he's saying. Now, one of the names you've heard that are part of this network, I want to come on particularly to, and that is Dr. Jordan Peterson. According to Neil, Dr. Jordan Peterson, I mean, Neil mentions things such as he uses a lot of his own sort of buzzwords which have been put out by the mainstream, including he talks about men's rights activists in a pejorative context. Did you hear me there? I didn't have the microphone on. Yeah, I don't know what you heard then. He mentions Dr. Jordan Peterson as part of the Mercer network. So can you hear me properly now? Sorry about that. And Neil uses a lot of buzzwords from the mainstream, and one of those is men's rights activists, and he uses that in a pejorative context. Now, people like Milo Yiannopoulos, of course, is the best known of these individuals. But he also mentions Dr. Jordan Peterson. Now, he's another guy who's on the Mercer ban and hit list. But Peterson is someone I've studied closely, and you remember my book? Remember my video buying Dr. Jordan Peterson's book? And I found his insights very uplifting, very inspiring. He stands up to cultural Marxism and things like that. And so I got to ask Neil, was Dr. Peterson therefore inserted into the public space to do some kind of damage? Was his persecution by his employers, the faculty, the students at Toronto University, some sort of act to bring him to the attention of these evil Nazis? When he had eggs thrown at him, he was labelled a racist, a misogynist, etc. These things were hurled at him by hecklers in his lectures. Was this all set up by Steve Bannon? Can you imagine him saying, "Think you can handle this, Geordie? Don't worry, mate. We'll pay you a lot in compensation." What Dr. Peterson has done is teach people they don't have to hate. Women don't have to hate men to be free. Black people don't have to hate white people to be free. White men don't have to hate ourselves to be free. And this revelation has given millions of people across the world a new lease of life. I cannot accept that the richness, the depth and complexity of Dr. Peterson's work are just the machinations of a billionaire conservative plot to enslave the world. And the same goes for many other problematic pseudo-intellectuals, the intellectual dark web, all these other names they're given. How far, and also I've got to ask this question, how far has Dr. Jordan Peterson's work advanced the white male redneck ruling class hegemony? Not 1 inch, as far as I can see. It's an exact opposite. This is the question. I mean, there's other people Neil does not mention. He doesn't mention Stefan Molyneux. He doesn't mention Sargon of Akkad, Carl Benjamin. There's people like Dave Cullen, Rin Mikhailis. These are influential centrist, anti-feminist, anti-cultural Marxism, anti-conservative spokespeople. Now, these people are not being funded by Richard Mercer, I can assure you. Rin Mikhailis in particular I know personally, and she's not. She's got a day job. She just does things as a hobby, like I do. Again, Neil dismisses QAnon. He says it's just a hoax perpetrated by trolls on 4chan, 8chan, and I'll come to that again. I'll come to that later in the program. And also I've done a live stream about QAnon, which there's a link in the description box to that. Neil also does not explain all the details of Richard Mercer's donation. I mean, Mercer did indeed donate a record-breaking amount, over $13 million US. That's a lot. But there's a few extra details we need to deal with here. Now, most of those $13 million did not go to Donald Trump. They went to Ted Cruz, Trump's rival in the primaries. Mercer originally backed Cruz and then switched to Trump.
Now, I'm biased over the issue, obviously, but I'm a bit concerned here. Now, this is an important point. Of course, I want Neil Sanders to be wrong, and for various reasons. If he's not wrong, then probably, to put it politely, we're fucked. But of course, if the truth is the truth is what it is, and we have to deal with it. And if what Neil is saying is true, there's no point getting angry with him about it. We just have to. He's simply telling us what is. But I don't think this automatically means that any of my criticism or questioning of Neil's research, despite my obvious element of wishful thinking, which is there, it can't be avoided, I don't believe that any criticism or questioning of Neil's research is to be instantly disregarded because of my feelings on the matter. I have endeavoured to remain objective, and I will continue to do so. I don't dispute that he's factually correct. This is another point I want to make. It's not conclusive. Now, Neil wrote a series of articles on his blog. There was one he started back in August, and he's carried on today. He put one up a couple of weeks ago. He's 3 more instalments now, actually. And I haven't debated this openly with Neil. I've lurked on Facebook while he's got into several arguments with various detractors, mostly on the Rich Planet Appreciation group. I have continued to read and assimilate what the information that Neil has tabled. Now, in his latest 2 posts, Neil, in the last 3 rather, he talks about the disturbing research by Philip Zimbardo, who, along with Stanley Milgram, discovered a side to human nature that is uncomfortable to contemplate. And I mentioned before that film The Experimenter in a previous video. And he also explains the way we are absorbed into positions where our rational mind breaks down, we act as if we're members of a cult. But Neil reveals evidence that is not accidental. None of it's accidental. It's part of a psychological manipulation field. Expert. You see, basically, they use these psychological discoveries to manipulate people. You see, this is what he's saying. Steve Bannon, Robert Mercer, they're all behind all this. They're all doing it as part of their network. Now, funny thing about it, just as an aside, did you know that Steve Bannon used to be involved with space exploration? Yeah, he ran a project to design a life support system for long-duration space missions called Biosphere 2. And I don't know if that's relevant in the same way it's not relevant that Robert Mercer comes from New Mexico. It's just, I don't know. It's something that came to me. Again, what does this mean for the 2016 effect? So Neil has generated a huge amount of material. A lot of detail. I can't see how he is incorrect about any of the individual facts that he has posted. I really can't. But what has he actually discovered in essence? What he's done is he's proven that there are wealthy people who will use their financial clout to influence politics, often employing questionable means. That's what he has proven, in essence. Well, so be it. I have no doubt that is the case. It always has been. Now, maybe that is indeed ethically problematic, but it is probably not going to stop. I'm not a utopian. I don't believe the end of the New World Order agenda will automatically transform the entire world's population into priests of High Atlantis. I don't go along with that New Age idea. I wouldn't be surprised if outfits like the Mercer Network continue to operate in the post-Illuminati era. And indeed, my books, the Roswell trilogy, shameless plug, available at all good bookshops now, that is fundamentally about that conundrum. That's what I've explored in the ideas of these books. And this is one of the reasons I still use terms like deep state, even if it's an invention of Steve Bannon's J-Trig efforts. And we also have to look at the proportions of what we've learned. Neil has exposed something that is not in any way equivalent to the New World Order agenda in my way. For example, would Cambridge Analytica theoretically be able to remove Margaret Thatcher from power? Could they carry out 9/11? Could they shoot President John F. Kennedy? Could they cover up free energy, aliens or ghosts? Now, the crimes I've just listed are real, and they are aided and abetted by people who use the same methods that Neil has talked about and correctly compares Cambridge Analytica to MI5 and the CIA. But what about the difference in scale? That's the point. It's not on the same level. In fact, I've got to ask the obvious question. If Neil Sanders is completely right about everything, then why was... If everything that happens in the world that appears to be going against the New World Order agenda, in fact, really is good. It's actually is actually supporting the New World Order agenda, but it's presented in a way that makes it look like it's opposing the New World Order agenda. Then, in a sense, that's another example of that's an unfalsifiable hypothesis. But if they are really that powerful, the Illuminati, the deep state, whatever you want to call them, if everything that happens in the world happens only because they want it to happen, then why was the New World Order not done and dusted ages ago? It should have taken 5 minutes. If this elite were truly all-powerful and everything that happens in the world is something they intend, and everything that appears to be against them is just something they intend, but it's dressed up as controlled opposition in more devious disguises. No. The Illuminati do not have everything their way. They sometimes face genuine forces of opposition throughout history, and those forces have never been more powerful than they are today. And eventually, their opponents are going to reach a level where the Illuminati can no longer oppose them, and that when that happens, it will fall. I think I'm on the winning team. I hope so, anyway. But you know, the people who dismiss 2016, they basically have an unfalsifiable hypothesis. Like I said, there are certain people, I think, they will just continue to believe that everything that happens is just because the Illuminati wants it. You know, a century or more into the post-Illuminati era, these people will still be peeping round corners going, goodness me, aren't they crafty? Not me, though.
Now, Neil Sanders is not the only person who's been talking in this way. In fact, I first heard about Neil Sanders' position on this when he appeared on the Rich Planet show. Richard D. Hall's brilliant series, and the other material, the various videos he produces, absolutely excellent. And although he gets some things wrong, as I said in my previous video about Pan-Turk, he is one of the best guys in this business. But I'm now going to go into something else he's got wrong, because he basically takes the same position as Neil. This is very clear in the interview he does with Neil. What I've done is he made a little video. Actually, this is funny. It was almost like a kind of digression within his video about the Pan-Turk incident. It's actually program 234 if you want to go and watch it, the Rich Planet show. At one point he is on the hillside waiting for the drill at the Llantrisant Royal Mint, which he believes is basically what all this fuss is about, wrongly, as I've explained. And he sort of goes off on a ramble while he's sitting lying there on the grass thinking, and I mentioned this actually in my previous Pan-Turk videos, and he starts talking about the European Union. And so what I've done is I've gone through this and I've made a little reply to him. So every so often I'll interject with my own little commentary on what Richard says.
Right, I'm going to make a point while I'm sat here about the EU. People are punching the air because we've left the EU.
Punching the air? Punching the air? Who's he talking about, I wonder? Do you know anyone who punches the air?
Now, if a politician was to come to me and say, well, what's your biggest concern? What's the major issue that you want sorting out, Richard? This is what I would say. I would say, well, the biggest mass murder since the Second World War is still unsolved, and the murderers are still at large. 56 people were murdered in London in 2005, and the perpetrators of that crime are still at large. They have not been caught. Right? Now, that is a bigger issue than any economic issue. It's the biggest issue.
Actually, yes, it is the biggest issue. One of those, along with many of the other things that Richard talks about. But I think the point Richard's going to make, if you know where he's going with this, if you might have seen the programme before, is that this somehow makes the European Union and our status in it irrelevant or very, very unimportant. And I disagree with him on this profoundly. And I'll explain why as he carries on.
As far as I'm concerned, right? Yes, we've got out of the EU. So is the UK Parliament going to investigate the London bombings? No. It carried out a phony inquest, and 100 MPs have been told by Rich Planet viewers that that inquest was phony and that the perpetrators are still at large. The evidence is voluminous for that statement, right? So you've got people in Parliament who are supposedly mavericks, people like Dennis Skinner or George Galloway. They're not mavericks, they're part of the system.
That's true, actually, as well. George Galloway I'm very suspicious of, quite frankly, because he used to be very, very pro-EU. Then all of a sudden he joins the Remain side along with Boris Bullingdon Club Johnson. Dennis Skinner, I think, he's also, he may be part of the system, but I think it's more an unwitting thing. It's more lack of imagination, failure of nerve, rather than a desire to deceive, being an insider. Richard, of course, he contacts MPs over things like this, and indeed he asked his viewers to contact their local MPs over things like this, which I did. He gave us a package to send, and I went and gave mine to Andrew Smith. Of course, he was Blair's education secretary, but that's not much good. He's gone now. They've got this cow called Annalisa Dodds doing it. But anyway, Richard he contacts MPs with things just to see whether any of them will react, and funnily enough, one of them did react the other day, but not in the way Richard wanted. He was actually on Question Time. It was Barry Gardner. Oh, it's hilarious. He's actually he's a Labour MP for Brent North. He was actually elected when Blair first got into power, and and he was on Question Time going on about anti-Semitism. And he says, "Look what was left in my. Look, I came into Parliament. Look, this was in my pigeonhole." And he holds up a picture of Richard's latest DVD about the Joe Cox killing. Oh, Richard, you're getting some publicity there, mate. But then he tries to associate Richard with racism, and I hope Richard sues him for that, which would be good. But anyway, the point is, Richard's saying MPs are useless, and they are generally because you give them this information and don't do anything about it. They don't investigate the 7/7 bombing, and that's true. But again, that doesn't necessarily mean that the EU is not something to punch the air about.
Because if they were real mavericks, they would see that evidence, they would see that there was flaws in it, and they would use that to attack the system and make the system address that question, and they would bring up questions in Parliament about the London bombings. Not one single MP has been brave enough to realise that evidence and then raise the issue in Parliament. So that tells you that all 600 and odd of them are not 100% looking at evidence and addressing the real question.
I think not brave enough is the operative word here. I don't believe they're all shills, they're not all agents. A lot of them are just in a system which demands compliance without necessarily knowledge of what's going on within the system. It's a system which has been developed over centuries, maybe even longer, to suck people in and make them dependent on it. I doubt if Dennis Skinner is thinking to himself, "Oh, but I've got to do my duty for the Illuminati here and not say a word about this 7/7 stuff." No, he's not. He's probably just going, "Oh, it's a load of rubbish. It's a conspiracy theory. I know because I read about it in the Guardian." See, so together with the media and things like that, that's how they do it. They don't do it by initiating people into it. This is why when people say the moon landings couldn't have been faked, everyone knew about it. Hundreds of people would have to know. No, not necessarily. You see, and those who did can be persuaded to forget. If you want to make yourself forget something you're supposed to forget, it's surprisingly easy.
They're just part of the river. They're part of the system. They're not free-thinking individuals who act on their own conscience. They're part of a system and they go with the flow. So why would you be happy that you're out of the EU when the biggest murder since the Second World War has not been solved, and none of those people are brave enough to address it?
I'll tell you why we should be happy, Richard. Because the very fact that we are out of the EU, or we might be out of the EU, or that the British people have chosen to come out of the EU in a referendum, is a symptom that the edifice that does things like the London bombings is in big trouble. It is a symptom that there is something wrong. There's a major snafu in the engine room, and it is translated now into real world breakdowns in the agenda. That's why we should be happy.
I mean, the currency argument okay, but the Bank of England is still a private institution which prints pound notes out of thin air and uses that to reap the wealth of the working man, right? So it's okay, it's a smaller entity than the EU, right? But does that really give the people more power if everyone in Parliament is fake?
Now, one thing I've never said, and I never would say, is that Brexit is the goal. Brexit is the end of the New World Order. In the same way that the election of Donald Trump was the end of the New World Order. It's not the end of the New World Order, but it may be the beginning of the end. You see, I'm well aware that it's just the first stage in a much longer and much more tortuous process. And I'd be the first to admit that, in a sense, the real challenge only begins after we've achieved this independence for Britain. And well, I've made several videos explaining why I think that is, and I've mentioned it before on this show. But I'll let Richard carry on, because I'll go into more details in a moment.
Just to interject here on myself at my ramblings on this hillside. Some commentators argue that in order to create a European superstate, the main thing that opposes this is the existence of nation states. So in order to move towards a single European power structure, they need to get rid of nation states.
Well, this is actually something I changed my mind on within the last few years, because I'd agreed with you more, I think, a few years ago, Richard. But yeah, the presence of the nation-state system, which has existed for centuries, is one of the things that has been listed as something that needs to be changed. It needs to be changed into a system of superstates. And indeed, you can find this in several political theory books. The idea of a one world government is not secret necessarily. It exists in very arcane publications by various very rather obscure ivory tower academics, but it is there. People like Zbigniew Brzezinski, for example, Henry Kissinger, there's many others, and the Project for the New American Century, and indeed I think George Orwell has actually tried to get the word out in fictional allegorical form, which is a very good way of getting information out, as I've done myself with my Roswell trilogy of books. But in the fictional 1984 scenario, there were three great superstates: Oceania, Eurasia, and East Asia. They were continually at war with each other, and these wars just come and go interchangeably. I think he was trying to warn us about what was planned, because he was a member of the Fabian Society. If you take into account the other amazing elements of that story, 1984 by George Orwell, I think we've got reason to take this one seriously as well.
One way of doing this is to force a significant number of people in every European country to emigrate to another European country. They can force this to happen by creating conflicts and by making certain legislation, such as free movement for economic migrants. This, of course, would create a next generation where some people have parents from two different nations, and the next generation after that have grandparents possibly from 4 different nations. Eventually, as time progresses, people would feel less passionate about their country due to the mixing of nations.
Well, believe it or not, I know not everyone knows this about me, but I am one of these people. I have parents of 2 different nations. My father was born in Bristol to a Bristol Welsh family. My mother was a Dutch woman. So yeah, I mean, of course this has been happening before the EU. Indeed, my parents moved over to England and lived together. Well, my mum moved over to England and lived with my dad before the advent of the European Economic Community. But it's not so much, I think, within Europe they want to shift people around, but they want to bring non-Europeans into Europe. And I've talked about that on previous shows.
If this is the plan, to get rid of nation states by forcing immigration, then it is a despicable one and is akin to a eugenics program. Let's also point out that strong nationalism has led to or has been the excuse for wars between nations in the past. So having a world made up of strong nation states is not necessarily better than having a one world state.
I think it is, Richard. I think it really is. Now, you're right, there's been terrible wars between nation states. In fact, that's there always has been. There probably always will be, actually. I think there always will be some level of warfare in society, because there'll always be some kind of conflict, which may well result in people taking up arms. I'm not a utopian. I do believe that might happen in the post-Illuminati world. The point is that a lot of the major wars, certainly the major wars of the 20th century, the First and Second World War, which were more destructive probably than all the other wars in history combined, were the product of globalization and the globalists who then went on to create the European Union, the superstate. And I think that is why I think that the idea of any kind of one world government would be an appalling entity, not least because it would centralize power in too fewer hands and not allow the working man his freedom that you and I both want, but because it is all part of the plan. And I don't see how it could necessarily happen outside that particular agenda, at least not in this particular cycle of history.
The problem with the psychopaths currently carrying out the globalist plan is that it appears they are trying to do it under the radar, using deception, with measures like deliberately creating an immigration crisis. If a global consensus could be formed which represented the wishes of the people of the whole world, I see no reason why the world could not function under one system.
Okay, I see where you're getting at now, Richard. If it was all done openly and everyone agreed to it, well, to be honest, I can't currently think of an argument why not. The problem is, again, this is the wrong period of history you're talking about here. I think it's a question that might be applied probably several decades at least after the transition to the post-Illuminati world, in which case you might be right. At the moment, it's quite a dangerous idea, and I don't think it's a good idea to suggest it.
The point I am trying to make here about Brexit is that even if nation states remain, the governments of nation states themselves might be just as bad as a larger entity. You only have to look at common purpose to see that underhand globalist strategies can penetrate into a local council level.
And this is exactly what happened with the major wars of the 20th century. And indeed, some of those beforehand. I mean, you and Nick Colliston were talking about USS Maine, and you correctly were stating that this was a major false flag event. False flag events go back through history. The earliest I can think of is probably the Great Fire of Rome, which was 2,000 years ago. You know the phrase, Nero fiddled while Rome burned? Nero was the guy who did it. He staged the Great Fire of Rome to justify and blamed it on some of his political rivals in order to create a climate of fear in which those people would no longer be trusted, and indeed were very quickly ousted. It also led to the creation of the world's first fire brigade. So, yeah, I mean, I'm also well aware that in the agenda before superstates, there were bad people around, and indeed those bad people are still there. The point I made, Richard, is that the breakdown of this superstate agenda, which we see in the world at the moment, is running contrary to their plans. And I know you may think otherwise, and I know you've had Neil Sanders on the show who thinks otherwise. I've done a written critique of what Neil Sanders has said, and indeed I'm going to probably cover Neil's work in more detail in the future. But that's a very, very long story, and I can't cover it here now. But yeah, I mean, I've got a lot to say about what Neil said, and I've covered it on the Herpanmo Voice blog. And keep watching Herpanmo TV, because there's a video coming up about that very soon, that long, complicated subject, which I'll have to leave for now.
So just being out of Europe, unless our current national system is completely replaced, I don't think is that much to get excited about.
Well, it is something to get excited about, Richard, for the reasons I've explained. However, I do take your point. It's not the end of the story by any means, and there are more challenges to come after that stage.
The immigration crisis, if you think that the Brexit thing is going to change that, think again. The immigration crisis has been engineered by people like George Soros. It's been engineered through fake organisations, through intelligence agencies. It's the politicians at the very top, the prime ministers, they just go along with the order that they are given.
Yes, indeed. I know that the immigration crisis is being engineered, and it's a terrible thing. It's an industrialized movement of people beyond anything we've seen in almost a century. Yet and I know very well that that is something that's going to would have to be faced in a hypothetical post Brexit situation. But it's it's not. You see what I mean? Is what I'm saying is that the breakdown of the superstate agenda, which we're seeing in the world today, most exemplified by Brexit, is a step towards the demolition of the immigration agenda, because the immigration agenda is connected with the same agenda that deals with the European Union. The two go hand in hand, and the exposure of one and the failure of one will be a big step towards defeating the other.
I agree with respecting indigenous people and making everyone happy. People should be allowed to move around the world if they want to, but indigenous people need to be respected. But we don't have any party or government that is going to implement policies which achieve that, whether we're in the EU or out of the EU.
Yes, but we will. And being out of the EU, the success of Brexit, the breakdown of the superstate agenda, is a big step along the way to having a government like that.
So getting excited over the fact that we're out of the EU is come on, phony bone of contention, folks.
No, it is not a phony bone of contention, Richard. I know what you mean. Your phrase, the phony bone of contention, is a very apt one, and it's a very accurate and descriptive way of addressing certain points and illustrating certain points, but it does not apply to this particular situation for the reason I've explained.
The day that there's a genuine investigation to find the real perpetrators of the biggest mass murder since the Second World War on UK soil, that'll be the day that I have restore faith. Not that I ever had any faith, but have faith in MPs.
You know, that certainly would be a sign that the New World Order agenda had failed if that happened, right? In fact, it would be. I don't see how such a thing could happen, except in a post-Illuminati world, or in a situation where the New World Order broke down, just preceding a post-Illuminati world. The thing about it is, this is what you're doing here is almost paraphrasing Andrew Johnson. And I know how close you and Andrew are, and I know how close you work together. And you're both good guys. I respect you both. Andrew says that he would believe that the New World Order had come to the end when he switched on the 10 o'clock news and saw Dr. Judy Wood being interviewed. And my answer to him is the same as my answer to you. Yes, if that happened, I think we could safely say the New World Order was not in very good health. However, Andrew, and indeed I think yourself, you both, I think, regard this as something that would happen spontaneously. That it would always come out of nothing. It would just one day, poof, and that's it. It's one day we're in the New World Order, the next moment we're not, and there's Dr. Judy Wood on TV, and there's a big inquiry into the London bombings, arresting the real perpetrators responsible. And indeed, my answer to that is, do you really believe that would happen spontaneously, or would it be the result of a process? Because I think it would be the result of a process, and the 2016 effect, that is the election of Donald Trump as US President and the EU, these are both early stages in that process. That's what I think is going to happen. Whether it will result in anything, I don't know, but it is definitely an early stage of the process, which could hopefully lead to the scenario which you just talked about, an inquiry into the 7/7 bombings.
Because MPs are not politicians. They do not make decisions which bring about real change in the world. They go with the flow of the order that is passed down to them by higher people with more power.
I know, Richard, that is the way politics works. That the politics we see in front of us is largely a public relations exercise, and that there is a deep state which lies above them, from where the real decisions are made. And that's true, but for reasons I've said, what we see in the world at the moment with Brexit, the referendum, regardless of what happens as the outcome, is a sign that that system is in trouble. The power structures of this world are, or had for a while, not had a phone call from head office for a very, very long time. And that's something we should take hope from. I know you say that we should defy authority, the authority of politicians. We should stand up to them. We should resist the pressure they put on us. That's true. But you know, Richard, authority can take many forms, and you yourself have a form of authority. And Richard, this is me defying you. This is me standing up to you. Okay? And that's life. That's how it works. You're right about some things, you're wrong about others. This is something that you are wrong about.
So there. Yes. It is a good thing that we voted the way we did in the referendum, and the powers that be tried to stop us and they failed. And I think it's if we achieve Brexit, it'll be an excellent thing. On the other hand, what if we don't? There's a part of me that thinks it may actually be better in the long run if Brexit is cancelled, because there was literally no way the powers that be could take the situation of cancelling Brexit and with the help of spin doctors and the media make it out to be something good. There's absolutely no way that could happen. Honesty like that over something so malevolent is suicide for a politician. Absolute suicide. It is literally the end for them if they did that. And the thing about it is the European Union is falling apart anyway, for reasons I explained in previous live streams. I will put links in the description box to previous live streams. And I think the cancellation of Brexit will actually speed that along, which could explain why Junkers and all those people in Brussels are actually quite keen. They're pushing May to get on with it. Even though 2016 and Brexit was something that the powers that be didn't want, they are now involved in a damage limitation exercise, a damage limitation procedure to try and heal the damage done from their point of view. And it seems like different elements of the globalist agenda are disagreeing over how best to go about it. Theresa May wants to keep Britain in. Various supporters from her faction want to do their best to undo Brexit. I think Brussels just wants to get rid of us because they know this. They know they can't just cancel Brexit. If they can't just deny it now without it being obvious that's what they're doing. I mean, it's just so obvious. I feel like the gloves have come off in this situation. I really do. I feel as if, in a sense, this is the end game, simply because everyone has dropped any pretense. For example, the Remainers and people like that. And it goes from the politicians all the way down through the sort of left-wing intellectual middle class, basically. There's a whole swathe of these people who are no longer pretending, they're no longer trying to hide their contempt for the white working class anymore. The Labour Party is no longer the party of the working class. Now, interestingly, Jeremy Corbyn, the garden gnome of the House of Commons, has himself committed political suicide. And following the split in the Labour Party, which I'll talk more about in the upcoming live stream, he's now completely ruined all his chances, which is probably a good thing. Not because I dislike Corbyn particularly. I think he's quite a decent guy. I think he's got principles. But the people surrounding him, especially Diane Abbott, I don't want those people in government. If Diane Abbott ever became Prime Minister, I'd move to Russia. Because I'd be in a concentration camp the next day. Seriously, that kind of hatred mixed with political power leads to atrocity. It always does. History's taught us this. We cannot let people like Diane Abbott and her racism and her sexism, we cannot let people like that into government. We can't give them power. Anyway, Corbyn has decided to back a second referendum. Yes, this is after swearing he never would. This is that 3 years he swore he would honour the referendum, the first original referendum. Now he's saying, no, I want to go along with the people's vote. Because you see, the 2016 referendum was not a people's vote, apparently. So Corbyn's now back in the second referendum, and of course now the Gang of Seven have now buggered off because of anti-Semitism and all this sort of thing, which I've discussed before in the previous videos with David Icke and the conspiracy theorist, Stop Conspiracy Theorist video. Corbyn has now basically thrown his towel in. with and he's basically climbed out the ring to his what is essentially now the core Labour voter, that is as I said, the intellectual left-wing middle class, who are the principal people who want a referendum. Is not and is not. You see, he's now, in a sense, he's also dropped his pretense that he was going to honour the Leave voters, who are primarily working class people, white people. And it's always said that the Labour Party was the Labour Party's core basis of their electorate. Now he's saying no, it's in a sense everyone's known this for a long time, that demographic is no longer the core electorate of the Labour Party. He now knows that the core electorate of the Labour Party is, as I said, the left-wing middle class, and what we should call, say, protected demographics. They are now the core voters of the Labour Party, which means. Which basically means, well, we're safe from a Labour government. That's the good news. The bad news is we're not safe from the governments we've got now, which really are just as bad. There's literally no alternative in Parliament. Now UKIP has been exposed as controlled opposition, and I know you're going to say, Ben, we told you that before. We told you UKIP was a scam. We told you UKIP was controlled opposition. Yes, you did. And I was not sure that was the case, and now I am. So go ahead, say it. Ben, we told you so. We told you so. All right, I know. I'll own that. I made a mistake. You warned me, and I didn't listen. It was actually, as I've said previously, it was Farage's behaviour in the last couple of months that I think has sealed any doubt has removed any doubt now. So UKIP are now finished. They're now no longer a force. They were the only position. They were the only mainstream political position that was any form of opposition. And it turns out they were like a rallying call to draw the fire of genuine people. I'm sort of encouraged, but I'm so sick and utterly tired of the Remainers and their attitude. It's just so demeaning. I mean, it's good because they're not pretending anymore. It's like there's a member of my family who's a Remainer, and I had an argument with her, and she said, like, oh, but you don't know, Ben. You don't know. You're not qualified to answer. And I go, see, this annoys me. This is where you get the ad hominem attack, which is across the board. You get this everywhere now. In fact, I'm not really complaining because I know it's the normal way to do business. And it's people like me we're the ones sitting on a desert island crying in the wilderness saying, no, what's true, what's fair? And other people saying, who cares what's fair or true or fair? This is what works. And so ad hominem attacks are the normal way to do business. Look, here's a word of advice. If ever you're hit with an ad hominem attack, I'll tell you how to respond. So supposing you're sitting down with someone and you say, these pot noodle is not very healthy, is it? And they say they're someone who works for the pot noodle company, and they'll probably respond with an ad hominem attack. They will go, well, what would you know? You don't have a degree in culinary chemistry. So that's an ad hominem attack. They're not addressing your point. They're not explaining why pot noodles are actually a health food. They are discrediting you as an individual. They're discrediting you so they don't have to address your point. That is what ad hominem fallacy is. Now, the way to respond to that, there's many ways you could respond to that. You could get angry and call them names or something like that, or you could shut up. Or I always do this. I would turn to them and say, all right, well, what if someone who did have a degree in culinary chemistry made the same point I did? How would you respond to them? And they will probably say something like, there are several ways they could reply. They might even realise they've been trapped and shut up or back down. Or they might say, well, that would never happen. The moment they say that, you've got them as well, because it's an unfalsifiable hypothesis. The moment you have a position in which everybody who is qualified to disagree with you would never disagree with you, your position is therefore ring-fenced from all dissent and criticism, and that is an unfalsifiable hypothesis. It is a fallacy, and it can therefore be dismissed. See, that's just a bit of a digression there. Anyway, course, there is a larger issue at stake here, and I'll say more about this in the upcoming live stream and future videos, which is, how is this related internationally? And I've already explained how, if Brexit is cancelled, all of Europe will be watching, including the countries which are significantly rebelling. Countries like Italy, vast swathes of nations across Eastern Europe, there's elements in France. All these people will be watching. And in a sense, these countries have made far more progress in terms of leaving the EU and gaining their independence than Britain has. We've had a referendum, but the political will is still 100% behind staying in the EU, which is why they're going to try and cancel it. However, in places such as Hungary, in Italy, etc., they actually have elected politicians, and Austria too. Austria's making a lot of progress. That have, and several other places in Eastern Europe, for that matter, there are several people. They actually have elected officials now who are saying, we want our country to be free of the EU. We want to be out. Now, those nations, I think, are actually in a better position than Britain, and they are going to see what happens if and when Brexit is cancelled, because they're going to see that the European Union is something you can get into, but you can't get out. It's a political lobster pot. And it's funny that, isn't it? Because at the moment there's the government are going, oh my goodness, isn't it difficult? This whole leaving process is so, we can't handle it. It's just so complicated. Oh no, backstop and no deal and stuff like that. Sorry, I was Ahmed wanting something. Am I still framed? Okay. Yeah. Sorry, where was I? Yeah. It's easy to get into, not easy to get out. The European Union, get in there very easily, not get out. But what I'm saying is, basically, I don't think we can lose this one. I really don't, because if we get Brexit, well, good. If we're independent, that's a big sign that the control system has gone. The globalists have lost in keeping one of the biggest economy in the European Union. Secondly, if we don't get Brexit and it's cancelled, then the continental dictatorship is going to fall apart even quicker. It's going to fall at a speed that the Roman Empire, which is one of its predecessors, basically to do the same job, never could match. Because it will, in a sense, they'll be showing their true colours. They'll be exposing the reality of their so-called democracy, the so-called freedom that the European Union has, the so-called democratic state, which is nothing of the sort. As I've explained in previous videos, the European Parliament is simply there for show. It's a public relations exercise. The European Commission has the power. And so this means that the most powerful man when it comes to the fate of this country is not the Prime Minister at all. It's the European Commissioner for the United Kingdom, who is the Welsh windbag himself, Lord Kinnock. Yep. So in a sense, Kinnock, I remember him crying when he lost I think it was the '92 election, because and then that's when he resigned from leader of the Labour Party. And I thought, when he looks back now, he must have thought, my goodness me, that was lucky, wasn't it? I got a much better and more powerful job after that. Yeah. Now, as far as the global scene goes, I was just saying the global situation regarding the Brexit. This is where we come on to the more controversial, probably one of the most controversial things I'm going to say in this video, and that is QAnon. And I know, again, a lot of you don't believe QAnon is real. I've discussed this with many people. I know that there's some people I respect and admire who don't agree with me on QAnon. I mean, Kev Baker is a perfect example. Good friend and comrade of mine. He's been on my show, I've been on his show loads of times. He is absolutely convinced that QAnon is a scam. He's convinced it's a hoax. He's convinced it's just a bunch of larpers on the chance. If that's what he is 100% sure of. He's been talking to Unirock, the guy who has allegedly exposed QAnon as a hoax. Having listened to the debates on this matter, I can't agree with him. I mean, it's possible, but I don't see... There's several reasons why I don't think that's the case. and I discussed them actually in the QAnon live stream, and I'll put a link in the description box to the QAnon live stream. Don't worry, I'll remember that one. And I think there's something real to QAnon, and now I'm actually more sure than I used to be. For the reasons, one of the reasons was I explained on my Stop Conspiracy Theorist video. That is that article in the Guardian, and another reason is that I've watched debates, like I said, where there's no doubt there is fake QAnon stuff out there. I mean, who's producing those T-shirts? Not the real Q, that's for certain. And then there's lots of fake Q posts and things like that. I mean, the way 4chan, 8chan work, it's these things can happen. Do watch the debates, by the way, between various people, the QTubers and the people who supposedly exposed it. But I mean, I think one of the most... I saw something the other day which is a very, very good... It's very, very enlightening, actually, because I think it makes Q more likely to be real. That actually supports the idea that Q is real. And that is actually... It came from a very unusual source, actually. It was Alien Scientist. You know Alien Scientist? Jeremy Reese. Now, Jeremy is a guy, he's a young chap from United States who does videos. Now, he's a very joyless and very bitter individual. I mean, the vast majority of his output is basically saying how awful other people are, and he lists a number of other people who he doesn't approve of. And in some cases I agree with him, in other cases not. For example, he's been very, very scathing towards Dr. Judy Wood, and he's utterly convinced that her 9/11 story is fake and not true, and her 9/11 research is not valid. I totally disagree. I do recommend watching Dr. Judy Wood's material, reading her book, watching the material by Andrew Johnson, reading his books, and indeed Richard D. Hall, who I've been talking about in this video. Do watch the stuff he said about Dr. Judy Wood and the interviews he's done with her and with Andrew. So Alien Scientist is I think in most cases he's talking nonsense about people. He has some of his videos are good though. The stuff about free energy sometimes is quite good, when he's not going on and on about how awful other people in the field are. But he brought this guy in. This guy came onto his live stream. It's a bloke called Hassan of the Grassy Knoll. Now, I hadn't heard of this bloke before, and it was only when I first heard about him on Alien Scientist live stream. Now, he's a guy he's a former intelligence officer. Now, Alien Scientist is totally against QAnon because he's against almost everything, and he's a very negative person, like I said. And Hassan of the Grassy Knoll, he brought him on because Hassan is a former intelligence officer, and I don't know if it's the CIA or NSA or what it is, or FBI or something, but he wanted to basically trash Q. So he set up this live stream, and this is going to be a Q debunking exercise. So he brings on this expert to say how Q is a load of crap. You can find it on Alien Scientist channel. It's a few months ago, but anyway, you got to scroll down a bit. But anyway, what Hassan said was very interesting, because in the end he had to admit that he couldn't confirm that Q was not real. He said there were certain suspicious elements to Q, but in the end he said there were some things that Q comes out with that he could only come out with if he or she or they, whatever they are, could only come out with if they were genuine and they were what they say they were. And you could see the disappointment on Jeremy's face, because what he hoped would be he brought Hassan on to debunk Q, and Hassan comes on and gives his honest opinion, and he says, well, Q might actually be real. So I think Jeremy Alien Scientist, I think he regretted doing that show. Now, yesterday Q released some interesting material. Now, I don't follow every word Q says, because I have a wide range of interests, but I know some people who specialise in Q, and I tend to just wait for them to hear what they have to say to alert me, like the Aslan's Raw group and people like that. And Duncan Campbell, who's been on Hapanlo Radio, you'll know. Now, QAnon said something very, very strange. Now, Q is generally very, very cryptic, and engages in these various Socratic dialogues and things like that when they're posting material. But occasionally, as I said in my disclosure video, they mentioned Roswell and things like that. Occasionally, they can become extraordinarily lucid. And last night they said this. This is really quite amazing. There was two Q posts were released yesterday evening. It's about to happen. Be vigilant. And in another one, sealed, unsealed indictments coming. That is pretty unequivocal, isn't it? That is more than the Q's usual somewhat abstract ways of talking. It's coming. Be vigilant, it's coming. Sealed indictments about to happen. It's about to happen. Sealed indictments is coming. Now, if this is a big practical joke, then the jokers are obviously, it's not working very well, because the jokers have made a specific statement which would undo the entire operation. And it's obvious, if this was a practical joke and Q didn't exist, then it would be obvious that it's something that they're quite enthusiastic about and want to keep going. Well, if this is not true, it's going to completely destroy them. So if Q is real, on the other hand, which I think is more likely, we are actually going to see. Are we actually going to see the storm? Is it finally arrived? Funnily enough, I mean, there has been some other things that Q has said which have actually been confirmed. For example, he said that there was certain people at George H.W. Bush's funeral. A number of envelopes were handed out. You can see this on the recording. A number of people in the front rows were handed out white envelopes. They opened them and they looked very concerned. People like, I think Hillary Clinton got one, Bill Clinton, a couple of other people, senior government officials got one. And there's been this video stating that all these people have been very quiet on social media lately. They've put up very few posts. The posts they have put up are done by proxies, because the real people aren't around. So, for example, Hillary Clinton posted a Christmas picture at Christmas time. And there was a picture of her and Bill and Chelsea sitting around the tree. Typical family Christmas scene, the Clintons get together, etc. But it turned out it was an old picture. It can't have been one from the Christmas 2018, because Bill Clinton, everyone looks younger. Bill Clinton doesn't look like a zombie. Hillary's got her hair different. Chelsea's sort of pretty young, like she used to be when she was here, actually, because Chelsea Clinton was at St Hilda's here in Oxford, at the college there, and she made a lot of trouble while she was here, actually, heckling anti-war meetings and things like that. So I'm guessing this is actually a Christmas picture from quite a few years ago, maybe a decade or so ago. So what's going to happen? I don't know, but I'm uploading this on Sunday the 10th. Now, in 2 days' time, Tuesday the 12th, there's going to be a big Commons vote on Theresa May's second draft deal. And a number of things can happen. We don't know yet, but what happens next is very interesting, because what's going to happen is, if her deal is accepted, Britain crashes out. Not crashes out. Britain leaves the European Union leaves the European Union with a deal on Friday the 29th of March. And yes, I am going to be filming that. I'm going to be in London that day. It's going to happen at 11 PM, and I will be in London at that time, and I will have my camera with me. It has to be then, so that the stock market doesn't have time to react, because it is a Friday. Then, if the deal is rejected, then another process begins where MPs get to vote on whether to leave without a deal or whether to petition the EU for an extension to Article 50. And my guess at the moment, my prediction at the moment, is that Theresa May's deal will be rejected. The first one was rejected by a huge majority, the biggest government defeat since 1922. But of course it wasn't a defeat. May wanted it, she wanted that deal to be rejected. So it wasn't a defeat, really. The second deal is probably going to be created to be as unpalatable as possible, so MPs will not vote for it. I mean, I don't blame MPs not for voting for a previous deal, because it was awful. I said this in an article at the time. So then there's going to be probably, my guess is they probably will be able to wangle an extension to Article 50, and it'll probably be about 3 months. Now that's time for the second referendum folk, the David Lammys and the Jeremy Corbyns of this world, to get what they want, and the second referendum will include the option of cancelling Article 50. And we'll see if that actually comes about. But my prediction at the moment is the deal will be defeated, and there'll be an extension to Article 50. I doubt, or either that. I doubt that there'll be a leave without a deal, unless Brussels really forces May into that position of leaving without a deal. In which case, Godzilla will rise from the graves, and everything, you know, it'll be rats crawling out from underneath settees, and things like that. All the other horror stories you've heard about, you know. Probably nah. But of course, they're going to sell that to people to frighten them. Something else might happen as well if there's an extension to Article 50, maybe even if there's not. And that is, something could happen to distract and to create a state of emergency in this country. It could be something like for Prince Philip dying, if he was in that car, as I said in my previous video about that. It could be some kind of false flag attack. And I mean, this has already happened, or there's already been a minor version of this, where some letter bombs were actually sent to a number of, sorry, my nose is itching like it always does when I talk, to a number of institutions a few days ago. 2 airports in London got one, and a railway station. A couple of universities were sent them. Now these were incendiary devices in parcels. The thing about it is, they weren't. Funny thing is, they weren't actually designed to do very much damage. I mean, they wouldn't have done much because they were detonated when the package was opened, and what happened was the package then burst into flames. But it wasn't a major fire, and the people who opened the package simply stamped them out. We don't know what the purpose of this was. We don't know who sent them. I mean, of course, you know, people have said the Brexiteers did it, the Muslims did it, the Russians did it. All the usual boogeymen are wheeled out and tabled. But if there's going to be some kind of false flag event, it's going to be something far more dramatic on that. And now, the Joe Cox killing. I've not watched Richard D. Hall's new film about this, which I will do, but I'm not going to watch it online. I'll pick up a DVD because I'm going to go see his live show. But I know Richard thinks that the Joe Cox killing has nothing to do with the EU. Again, it's completely wrong, because he thinks the EU's not significant. That's probably led him to his conclusion. He's totally wrong. The Joe Cox killing, or lack of killing, has everything to do with the EU. It could be something like that, a murder of a politician, probably someone more high profile than poor little backbench Joe Cox. It may be something like that. I don't know. I'll have to wait and see. Anyway, keep an eye on this channel, because I'm actually going to post, within the next 24 hours, I'm going to post a live stream, an upcoming live stream notice, because there's going to be a live stream on Wednesday. It'll probably be Wednesday. I can't guarantee, but it'll probably be Wednesday. The details will be there. It's going to be about the Tuesday vote in Commons. Okay, so keep an eye out for that. So all I can say is, where we go one, we go all. Brexit now, Brexit hard. Trump, Brexit, Trump, Brexit, Trump, Brexit, Trump, Brexit, Trump, Brexit, Trump. I'm triggering Neil Sanders and Richard D. Hall there. Anyway, do watch the live stream. Keep your eye out for the notice. Thanks for watching Hapanwo TV. Hospital Porters, Pride and Dignity. Stop the New World Order.